Hello everyone, I'm Slave to the Games, and today we're going over everything about Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. And no, this is not like every other YouTuber who just ripped the basic info off the Bloodlines 2 website. Yes, there is some copy pasting, but very few. Nearly everything I'm about to tell you is written or rewritten to some degree with some exceptions. I spent hours, and I mean hours, scrounging for anything and everything I could to bring you the hopefully most detailed, in-depth video on this game. This does not include anything to do with the tabletop version at all. If you do enjoy this video, nonetheless, please leave a like and subscribe, and look forward to my current playthrough of the first Bloodlines game, as well as the upcoming series for the second. Please like this, I worked so hard. Remember, Bloodlines 2 will be available for Xbox One, PC, and PS4 sometime late this year. Let's just hope it doesn't get delayed again. From Seattle's founding to the present time, it has been run by vampires. In Bloodlines 2, Seattle's districts have been faithfully reimagined in the World of Darkness setting. You can meet the vampire founders and newer vampires who are all redefining the city. Each faction has their goals and hidden agendas, so make sure you know ahead of time who you want to support before locking anything into place. And know that at the end of the day, you made the choices that got you to your specific ending. As a side note, the first had 5 endings, so I believe anywhere from 5 and below will be what we get. To be realistic, it'll most likely be 2, 3 at max that are drastically different, with some side stuff like at the end of a follow game explaining how your choices did whatever it was that they did and how it affected the people afterwards. Oh, apparently, and this is something I'm skeptical on, it apparently has reactive storytelling, but let's just say, as with every game that claims that your choices matter, so does Bloodlines 2. How much do they matter, you ask? Well, based off the first Bloodlines, you'll most likely experience everything another person did, with the exception of the different choices each of you made, missed content, or content you were locked out of because of choices you made. Few things will be missed unless you could care less about anything but the main story, and locked content probably won't amount to that much, so feel free to play how you want, whether you only play once or multiple times with every faction and in every way you can possibly think to try. The game was written by Brian Mitsoda, I hope I pronounced that right, please don't bash me if I didn't, and he's the original Bloodlines writer. God, I really hope I didn't. Now we're moving on to the player, and that's you. You're one of 8 in total, including yourself, who are randomly attacked in a mass turning, otherwise called the mass embrace. An inquest, and we're just gonna say bounty, is called in order to get to the bottom of the mystery as to who, what, why, etc. And for some reason, you're the one who's given the job, whether you like it or not. Because let's be honest, if not, we wouldn't have a game. Oh yeah, plus, you are the only one initially identified as a victim of the mass embrace, so you'll have to find the others as well. You are living in Dominic's apartment, a person and another thin blood journalist who was investigating the mass embrace and was killed before the mass embrace, well, you know, happened. You will eventually choose a side or sides, as I have come to believe after watching videos and reading up on a bunch of articles, as you can join multiple factions apparently, and play an important role in the war for control over Seattle. During your playthrough, you'll find out things like why you were made, who's pulling what strings, and who your real enemies may be. Or you won't. Depending on your choices, you may very well miss things as well as answers. You are allowed to create your biography. For example, to indicate that in the previous life, you worked as a policeman or a coroner, etc. You can also choose the gender regardless of your body type. Your character, by the way, is not voiced, which apparently allowed the scriptwriters to use more answers and have more dialogue choices, etc. Players no longer assign attribute points to determine their abilities. Instead, you are capable of handling any weapon you come across. Now we're going to talk about the Masquerade. Basically, short story short, if you show your powers, feed, etc. in a Masquerade protected zone, you lose 1 point out of the max points given to you at the start. Think of like, well, the wanted level in GTA. However, they never go back down. You can get Masquerade redemptions, but as of right now, I've not paid attention to whether it actually replenishes a point or not. I do believe so, but I'm also not sure if this is actually in the second game or not, as it is in the first. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please. Finally, each point lost, different things will happen. You may be hunted, there may be less humans in an area, etc. But once you hit 0, you lose. The game is over. Which brings us to humanity. The parameter humanity is still in use. The murders worsen the humanity, but it's impossible to do completely without them. Behavior will affect the content of the dialogues and missions. And basically what this means is, unlike the first game where if you lost all your humanity, you'd automatically lose, in this one, you aren't gonna automatically lose. But it is going to affect your dialogue. It is gonna affect how you're seen. It is gonna affect more than just you. Now finally, we enter the biggest copy-pasted area, well, the second biggest, but anyways, it's clans. Bloodlines 2 has 6 clans. The Thin Blood, which is what you start as, they're the weakest bloodline of vampires, yet also more resistant to sunlight, because one could say you are really just a hybrid between human and vampire at this point. Then there's the Bruja, outcasts and drifters, which have never been a large part of the vampire community here. Most are leftovers from failed anarch movements in the past century, with most choosing no sides and to be free. Well, at least they tend to claim that. The Tremere, and I probably botched that, excuse it, okay, were originally, they weren't allowed in significant numbers at all throughout Seattle's history, though that has changed recently. After the fall of the Pyramid, Tremere have sought allies wherever and with whomever they can find them, offering services and secrets that until then were kept to themselves. The Toreador, again, I'm so sorry, have been well entrenched within Seattle's power structure since days as a pioneer settlement. They're the frat boys and frat girls of this society, okay? That's the nice, short and sweet story for them. The Ventru, who are making a return, of course, from the first one as well as the others, have made it big in the business of the modern society, paving the way for their clan and making enemies of the residents who prefer the way things, well, more traditional or as they were before everything else started changing. The Malkavians have been ostracized by other vampires, while few managed to claim territory in less desirable districts, even less have managed to rise to levels of other clans. Which also brings us to factions. I will not lie, this part this part is definitely the most copy-pasted portion of this entire video, I promise you. But I try my best to shorten it and only get to the points that matter without the extra bullshit caked on top. Each faction, their own beliefs and motivations, yada yada. Basically, you can decide who you want to join, cross, or pit against each other in the game. Choosing one or more of these will impact your ending and your story throughout the time you're playing it. First, let's go over the vampires of the Pioneers, who were among the first to settle and rule here. Led by Lou Grand, the longest reigning prince of the area, they have lost control of previous territory to the other vampiric factions and are unhappy with that. They do want to rule the city again, but have been forced to accept the rules of others. In exchange, they have been allowed to save face by keeping control over some minor parts of the city. A collection of individuals from different clans, unified by their idealistic and romantic notion of Seattle as the last frontier, is exactly what this group is made of. The vampires in Lou's group include loggers, fishermen, bootleggers, old money families, musicians, and artists, as well as some other similar types. Now, a much shorter one is the Camarilla. Vampires loyal to Alec Cross. You'll find CEOs, software muggles, bankers, venture capitalists, politicians, and other members of the business elite. That's basically who they are. Other than being a little bit snobbish, they're the high-end loyal people. They're the people who believe that they should be ruling above everybody else. That's all that we need to go over for them. It's hard to know just how many vampires swear allegiance to the Baron of Aurora. In parts, that's because very few of Seattle's vampires have actually met him. He rules the vampiric societies underground. Acting through his lieutenants, he has taken in the city's destitute, defiant, and desperate, turning them into ruthlessly disciplined horse with hands in every shady deal. He has so far been content to stay in the back alleys of his turf, hoard favors, and brutally defend his business interests. The faction's charismatic leader, Professor Victor Goga, offers any vampire who would join him safe access to blood in one of the city's richest hunting grounds, spot in a rapidly progressing organization, and a promise of something greater. Those with talent can rise to the top quickly. The Baron's biggest rival is Professor Victor Goga and this group. Founded by blood mages, recruiting from and hunting in the university, the newcomers are easily Seattle's most learned kindred faction. Lately, their ranks have swollen with occultists, scholars, college students, runaways, and more than a few defectors from the other factions. And this brings us to our last, at least base game, last faction, which is the Unseen, who walk among the unfortunates. They're basically homeless people and drifters, hidden in plain sight to vampires and humans alike. For more than 100 years, the Unseen have been led by the Council of Three, or the speakers to the Nosferatu. While the rest of Seattle's vampires took pains to ignore them, these Unseen grew into a faction, began trading secrets as well as grudges. Where the Unseen used to be composed of thieves, frauds, and homeless, they now also include journalists, engineers, and hackers. No other faction of vampires in Seattle looks out for their own like the Nosferatu do. Okay, let's move on to combat now, and it's very simple here. The combat is first-person focused, just like the majority of the entire game. You can use a range of melee weapons and firearms, as well as your vampiric powers to fight. Powers and weapons are, well, limited if you put it up to certain other games, but remember that while combat is a big part of the game, its main focus is the story. I also wanted to briefly go over the UI interface, and basically, we're just gonna go step by step, and that's the top middle of the screen shows the compass, and in the center of that, slightly below below shows the Masquerade status. Basically, it's going to tell you if this is a Masquerade protected zone, if you're allowed to have free combat here, etc. Bottom left is going to show the amount of blood and the current discipline selected. The top bar that you see out of those two bars right there is health, with green being what you have now and the max of what you're able to have at that moment, and yellow being aggravated damage, which lowers your overall max health. Now, aggravated damage will require you to go back to your haven and can't be healed by normal means. The bar below that is your frenzy meter. Depending on your level of humanity and clan selection, that might grow at different rates. Yellow triangles on the screen will show you incoming attacks from enemies. And that's basically all I'm going to go over. I just wanted to briefly go over what you're going to see in the gameplay demo that's available, or anyone else that, took the gameplay demo and decided to, cut different parts of it, for their own videos. Now you at least have a basic understanding of the screen. Okay, now we're going to go into disciplines, and this is what I believe is the biggest portion of this video. Basically, at character creation, you will be able to choose one of 3 starting thin blood disciplines. Later, when you choose your full blood clan, you get 2 more additional disciplines. We're going to go over them right now, and I mean all of them. First, let's start with thin blood disciplines, and that's, again, please excuse any of these that I botch, the Chiropteran, and basically the first 2 in that is Glide, and Glide greatly lowers the weight of the vampire's skeleton and muscle mass to allow them to float on updrafts, reaching otherwise inaccessible areas. In the air, the vampire can swoop into NPCs to knock them down, pounce on enemies far below, or use the height advantage to rain down other disciplines from afar. The Bat Swarm allows the vampire to summon a small swarm of bats to attack a target NPC, temporarily disabling them and dealing low damage. Moving on, Mentalism is basically Pull and Levitate, and Pull, it allows the vampire to manipulate inanimate objects from afar, whether that's an inconvenient obstacle or the knife in the hands of the NPC bearing down on them. Levitate, well, that suspends a living NPC in the air. The vampire can then levitate everyone and everything in an area and throw suspended enemies around like ragdolls once you upgrade this enough. Finally, the last one in this tree, Nebulation, and this is Mistshroud and Envelop. Mistshroud envelops the vampire with mist for a short time, muffling footsteps and making them slightly harder to notice. In addition, the vampire can partially transform into mist for one invocation to either perform a choking attack on an NPC or travel through tight spaces, while Envelope creates a stationary, swirling cloud of mist that surrounds, blinds, and forcefully enters the lungs of NPCs that touch it. It and Mistshroud can both be further upgraded. Moving on to the Bruja disciplines, we see Potence and Celerity. Now, from this point on, with each clan powers or abilities disciplines, I'm going to tell you exactly which ones break the Masquerade. Potence is the first one, and the use of Potence powers in front of unsuspecting mortals is a Masquerade violation. These include Fist of Cain and Earth Shock. Fist of Cain allows the Bruja to deliver a devastating punch that turns walls into rubble and throws enemies through the air, tearing off limbs and causing collateral damage. Earth Shock smashes the ground with titanic force. The impact causes a shock wave around the player, damaging and knocking down anyone who dared to stay too close. After further upgrades, the ground cracks under the Bruja's onslaught, sending fissures outward and damaging anyone caught in the cataclysm. Celerity, well, basically, if any mortal can spot a use of Celerity, it's a Masquerade violation, and this includes Unseen Storm and Accelerate. Unseen Storm allows the vampire to dash in a direction of their choice at such a speed as to momentarily disappear from view, allowing them to land attacks, dodge around enemies, or get away before the dust has time to settle. Characters struck along the way of the dash get knocked down. Accelerate, well, that opens up speed so fast that everything else in the world appears to slow down to a virtual standstill. Assailants seem frozen in their attacks, cars crawl forward, and bullets zip by lazily. And the third one, which is Tremor? We're moving on that. Okay, we're moving on past a lot of things in this video, and that's Thaumaturgy. Again, probably botched that. The use of Thaumaturgy in front of witnesses is a Masquerade violation. This includes Skewer, Purge, and Blood Boil. Skewer launches a small portion of the vampire's vitae, or the vitality, at the feet of their enemies, where it erupts in a patch of razor-sharp spikes. Once they dissolve, a stream of blood flows back to the caster. Purge allows the vampires to make their victims vomit up blood, damaging them heavily. Once again, a stream will follow back to the caster. It also has an apparent ultimate potential, so invest in that if you want to see what it is. It's probably the mass suicide from the first game, let's be real. Then there's Blood Boil. A master of Thaumaturgy may cast Purge for a second time on an affected NPC, causing the blood in their veins to sear. The person will then explode within minutes, and bystanders in a large area are damaged. And once again, the blood will come back to the caster. And then we have Auspex. Use of Auspex is not a Masquerade violation at all. It has Aura Sense and Psychic Projection. Aura Sense allows the vampire to spot NPCs even through walls, read crowds at a glance, and mark individuals to keep them in their sights over long distances. It also allows the user to spot the weaknesses in the marked NPC's attack and defense. Basically, it's an upgraded eagle sight. Psychic Projection detaches the vampire's mind from their body. Untethered, they can explore the area in an astral form, remaining free to use Aura Sight to mark any character they spot. Beyond that, the vampire's mastery of their own senses has grown to such an extent that they can telepathically overwhelm the senses of others for a short while. At least half of that is basically when you're using a hawk or a bird or whatever it is you have in the Assassin's Creed games to mark territories as well. So if you know what that is, that gives you a pretty rough idea of what this is. And we move on to continuing to botch every name in the video, and this is the Toreador. They're going to have Presence, which using Presence powers is not a Masquerade violation. It's going to include Awe and Entrance. Awe allows the vampire to strike a pose that freezes all before them into an adoring wonder. For a short while after, these new admirers will be oblivious to anything but what they just saw. Entrance forms a group of admirers around the vampire. For an extended period, these hanger-ons will follow wherever the object of their adulation may go, distracting nearby enemies along the way. Toreador also has Celerity with Unseen Storm and Accelerate, but we're gonna move past that because it's the same powers. Onto the Ventru, the most mainstream one there that I can actually think of, and they have Dominate, and using Dominate powers is not a Masquerade violation. Under this is Mesmerize and Command. Mesmerize allows the Ventru to place one NPC in a brief hypnotic trance. The person who's affected is oblivious to the world around them, ignoring sound, touch, and even pain. And then we move on to Command, which significantly extends the Ventru's control over the mesmerized NPC. They can now be ordered to move, remove obstacles, or even attack others. Oh boy. This is not the 8th take or anything, but Fortitude, everyone! Allowing a mortal to witness your fortitude under attack is a Masquerade violation. Absorb and Personal Armor are both things under this. Absorb allows the vampire to take a brief defensive stance in which they may deflect all attacks they can see, healing their wounds for every would-be strike. Personal Armor hardens the vampire's skin into a stone-like barrier. You upgrade this power, you can get it to a point where a true master becomes impervious to attacks, causing attackers to stagger back from the recoil of their own strikes. Lastly is the Malkavian. I believe that's how you say it. Not Malkavian? I think it's Malkavian. We're going with Malkavian. First, we have Dementation. And pretty much the use of Dementation, while thoroughly unsettling, it's not really a Masquerade violation. And that's Haunt and Berserk. Haunt imparts an unseen specter in the victim's minds. Unable to control themselves, they'll flee, trying to get out of the scene and panic. Now, Berserk, it fills the vampire's targets with an uncontrollable rage, causing them to lash out at anything nearby, even the air itself, if there's no target around them. And this also has Auspex as well, so whoop, that's it. We're done with their abilities, guys. Their disciplines are over with. Thank you for listening. Now let's move on to the next thing. Now, all subjects after the previous two are going to be shorter, I promise you. And we're going to start with Heightened Senses. You now have the ability to enhance your vision and hearing, which can help find hidden objects, discover secrets, and allow you to see other life forms. Again, as with the last videos, no pun intended here, it pretty much works on everything. Now, this can literally be compared to the Assassin's Creed senses that they have. You know, you click the button, then you can see everything highlighted and blah, blah, blah. You get the thing. That's exactly what it is. Okay, now we're going to go over feeding, which to me is one of my favorite parts of what we're going over in this video. I think everything about this game is cool, don't get me wrong, but I just think this is a really cool thing. So as a vampire, blood is very important to your character, and I'm not just saying this as a role-playing aspect, okay? So get off with that. It can heavily impact your play style. If you've played the first Bloodlines, you know this. Depending on if you have blood or not, it will change how you play the game. It'll change how you approach a situation. It does. It's not just, oh yeah, it may change. No, it definitely does. This isn't just false advertising, it really will. As of Bloodlines 2, you can now detect human emotions and gain temporary as well as permanent buffs depending on the 5, at least, emotions that are in the game. And that's rage, delirium, fear, pain, and desire. I'm sure there's more than this. It's just I struggled and I literally had to confirm like one of these. There's more of them, but we're gonna go there. As with the last game, being without it for too long or having used all of your available blood will cause you to go into a frenzy. Losing control of your character for that brief moment of time is gonna suck because depending on where you are, your character character will attack anything that moves during this time. And I mean everything for this duration of time. You have no control over your character. Also, there are stronger and weaker levels of resonance in this game. The creators say playing the long game helps, so really I'm unsure if this is confirmed that waiting longer to feed will pay off more in the end or not. Basically, with the stronger levels of resonance, some people have stronger emotions than others, and if you feed off stronger emotions, you get better buffs. Now, my question is, when they mention this, do they mean that if you don't kill someone right away, over time, their emotions will grow stronger, and then you can feed and, you know, gain that, and you can kind of like always wait for a max like emotion, or not? I mean, basically, I think it's just going to be different people have different levels of resonance. I don't think over time it's actually going to grow, but I'll be pleasantly surprised if that's true. Now, the creators mentioned that there's two types of feeding, and this basically is just what you would expect. That's fatal feeding, where the NPC dies and you take a hit to your humanity, though you do gain more blood. And then there's the partial feed, where you gain a little bit of blood, a little bit of resonance, and then the NPC lives. The heart and veins will be different colored. When you use your eagle vision or vampire vision, it's going to show different colors. With rage, you will get a bonus to combat capabilities, and this color is red. With desire, you will strengthen the skills of charm. I'm also unsure of this color, okay? Delirium, pain, and fear, I have yet to figure out their boosts or colors as well. I can only guess. Like, I've seen all the different colors. I don't know what goes to what other than for rage. So we're gonna move on from that with a quote from the creators. In our game, vampires are looking for something called resonance. That means very strong emotional feelings in human beings. Vampires don't really have strong emotional feelings, so in order to experience an emotion such as rage, desire, pain, love, etc., they have to get it out of people who have these very strong emotions already in their blood. And I find that cool, because not only does that build on the vampire lore, but it also, you know, it showcases that struggle to become more human from, well, the monster that you are as a vampire. Assuming you want to do that. Of course, this is also a choice. You don't have to seek resonance. You can just drink whoever's blood you want. You can kill as many people as you want. Being on the world section, Bloodlines 2 follows in the steps of Prey, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, and Dishonored, by allowing the player to pick from multiple options on how they want to interact with and traverse the world. Bloodlines 2 will share an immersive sim element, pretty much like rummaging through items, reading logs, watching the world react to your actions, etc. To what extent and how many different ways does this affect? Well, it's probably just that. We're probably not going to see too many more examples of this other than what's basically in every game that claims to have, well, choices and consequences, but I will hold out my opinion until I actually play the game on this, other than keeping a healthy dose of skepticism, because while I do think it would be amazing if there was more than that, and if they actually follow through with everything they're saying, I do think this is just going to be another choose your own type of game, which is not bad. I definitely am completely on board with it and will completely enjoy this game, I'm sure, assuming that the story is good, but I haven't really been too surprised with any groundbreaking new choice-based games anytime as of late. One thing I do want to point out though is that the real underground in real life in Seattle isn't as expansive as the one in Bloodlines 2, as following reality apparently, in the creators' words, would make it much more boring, as basically it's just basements, small tunnels, and some old sewage. So they decided to, well, revamp it and use fantasy for that. Come up with a cool layout, something that would actually make it more interesting than just, well, stumbling into a basement. Like, that's nice. Don't worry guys, this video is almost over. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed everything we've gotten to so far. I really hope you're learning something, and I really hope at this point you've been like, wow, he really has actually told me something I haven't learned from other people or articles, because I really tried to make this work. Anyways, let's get right into the end. The events of this story are taking place several years after what you have experienced in the original Bloodlines, should you have tried to play it. Hardsuit Labs plans to release free updates with additional parts as well. Now, I do have to interject here, and I have to say, I really hope the additional parts or the free updates are after the game, because I know there's some people who are completely fine with playing the game multiple times. I do not want to do that. I want to have a canon end for me, and what I mean by that is when I play through my story, I'm gonna roleplay it as if it's me. It's gonna be my story. So by the end of it, that's my ending. Now, if free updates and additional parts come out where there's additional storylines and additional plot lines, but I can't do it because I beat the game and I have to restart, I'm not gonna want to do that. So I'm gonna miss out on some content that I really don't want to miss out on. And yes, I know there'll be people saying, and just replay the game. What do you got to lose? I mean, games like these are meant to be played multiple times. And I have to disagree. While that might be the way that most people play or do like to play, I'm sure there's other people like me who prefer the way I explained it earlier. And I'm really hoping that these just continue the story or add additional stories. And one thing I really hope it doesn't do is do side character story, because I don't care about them, okay? Other people may, but I don't. But that's just some extra dialogue. Let's move on. The game's going to apparently take about 25 to 30 hours to beat, with their own words saying,
"The path to the captions will take 25 to 30 hours depending on playstyle."
So this could simply imply that the game is longer if you do a completionist run, or depending on the difficulty. And you know, now that I mention it, I don't think I actually found anything about the difficulty. Hopefully there's difficulty. The first one's hard as hell, or is at least difficult if you don't actually prepare or know what you're doing. So it'd be great if there's difficulty for others who actually want the game to be something more than a cakewalk. The player will meet new and returning characters, but which ones those will be, I have no idea yet. And I honestly didn't really look too much into that part about who's going to be returning, because like I said, I haven't beat the first game yet, and I don't want to spoil that for myself. So if you guys are curious, you guys are going to have to look that up yourself, at least until, you know, I finish the first game. There's also going to be mod support. So while that's great, my opinion on that's very skeptical, because when it comes out, I'm going to want to play the game immediately. But I know eventually, possibly like say Skyrim and Fallout and some other games, there's going to be graphics mods, which I really love. Anything to make my game look great. By the way, I have it for PC. Anyways, anything to make my game look, did I say game? I meant game. Anything to make my game look better or look more detailed, just anything like that is something I definitely would want in my game. Things like quality of life, things that are going to improve the game, not make it easier, not make me the most badass person ever, nothing like that. Just anything that I think makes the game more realistic, more believable, etc. is things that I would be interested in. Now, the dance that has returned is actually not the original. It was mocapped and thus may look slightly different, and for some stupid reason, I have no idea why. It's not like the first Bloodlines is like the best game ever. I am having fun with it and enjoying it, but it's not like a truly epic experience. Yet somehow, seeing that dance, that glorious dance in the gameplay demo, I don't know why, it made me smile. It made me happy that it was there. And I don't even know, like, it adds nothing to the game. It adds nothing to me. I'm not even gonna go in there that much to do it. I mean, okay, you know what, that's a lie. I'm definitely gonna go, and I know you're gonna go in there every time you stop by that place, or even if you're just walking by it, you might even just stop in there just so that you can see that for 3 seconds, and then stop and walk out and pretend like it never happened. It's just that type of thing. Using the Vampiric parkour to scale buildings, objects, etc., as well as jumping off buildings in front of people can cause Masquerade violations, and there are some actions you can take which will immediately anger police and more. Though, I know some of you probably noticed this while watching the demo, where the guy jumped off the building, landed in front of a person 20 feet away, and they did nothing. So I'm hoping either that's A, bug, B, they were just looking at the ground and didn't see it, but I feel like that's just asking too much, or C, this is something they'll fix since they have all this time that they delayed the game, and they're working on polishing every single aspect of the game since they have all of this extra time.
Are you listening to me?
Fix all these problems, please and thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. I play it exactly as it is right now. Moving on, we have dialogue options, which will be provided or enhanced based off your abilities, plan, disciplines, humanity, and build, meaning that there are base options for dialogue in the game, and then depending on your build and everything else, you can get additional dialogue choices. And then one thing to keep in mind in Bloodlines 2 is that even if you have enough points, let's just call them that, it doesn't help if you choose that versus, say, a normal choice. Dialogue options are not instant win buttons in this game. Finally, guys, this is the part that's going to end it all. Let's do a quick summary. Basically, the main character, you, wakes to find yourself being staked in the chest and wheeled into a courtroom, where vampires of feuding factions accuse one another of having perpetrated the mass embrace, when 7 new vampires, including yourself, making a total of 8, are created at once. A flashback shows the events as they transpired, multiple vampires descending onto a park, feasting on mortals and forcing them to drink their blood. Soon enough, fire erupts in the courtroom, incinerating nearly all those present, allowing the main character to escape. This is where the playable section begins, though there will have been dialogue options up until this point. The player has to navigate a burning building, making it through a section of Seattle's underground, encounter a mesmerized man with a cell phone, beat up a bunch of mortals with a gun, eventually almost get killed by a vampire assassin, and also, you know, deal with this mysterious girl who somehow may know you. Some mystery mysteries are laid out right from the beginning of the game. And these are: who did perpetrate the mass embrace and why? Who is the woman on the phone and what is your connection to her? Why is the vampire assassin hunting people down and why aren't you on their list? How will the main character evolve from being a thin blood to being a full blood? Well, only time will tell. And right now we got plenty of time before Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 releases to dwell over whether you want to get this game or not. As for me, as I've mentioned before, I already have this bitch pre-ordered, ready to go with the Blood Moon Edition. Do believe it's the Blood Moon Edition. I do hope you enjoyed this video, as I'm sure it is long, it was long, and I did my best to cover as much as I possibly could. I literally looked over 30 articles, if not more, and started to watch multiple other YouTubers cover this, but I was barely satisfied as nearly all of them just read exactly what was on the website without even attempting to put it in their own words or find any more information than that. And I understand, yes, there's parts that I actually did copy and paste, so you say, so that I could have that and, you know, have all the most information that I could go, but I at least tried changing some words, try putting it into my own words more than just changing the to that or da to sa, or just changing it so ever so slightly. I tried to do as much as I possibly could to make it my own. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like and subscribe to show your support. If I missed something, which I'm sure it's very possible, by all means leave a comment below. Just as well as if there's something you want to know or for me to make a video about, feel free to bring up that idea. Anyways, I'm sure you have heard my voice enough for today, and once again, I thank you for watching this. I'll catch you guys on my next stream or upload. Until next time, guys.